Okay, and Daf Yomi for the week is sponsored by Rabbi Yehuda Greenwood. B'schus refuah shlema for Bela Yentel Bas Chaya Rachel. Thank you very much, and thank you for the delicious coffee as well. And we are 2 lines up from the wide lines. Tadi Yamid Beis Tanya. We learned in a brayso. Rabbi Simai says, "Minayin l'tchias hamesim min Torah." We're going to keep asking this question. What other potential sources might we have for tchias hamesim in the Torah? Shenamar, as the pasuk says, "V'gam hakimus es brisi itam laseis lehem es eretz Canaan." I'm going to uphold the covenant, the deal that I have with them, and laseis lehem, to give to them as eretz Canaan, in order to give to them the land of Canaan. Now, it doesn't say lachem. It doesn't say that Hashem is giving you, the Jewish people, at that time, the land of Canaan. Ella lahem. It's to them. And who's the them? The fathers, the forefathers who were promised, right? Hashem says, I'm going to promise the forefathers, I'm going to give the land, and I'm going to give it to them. So, mikan tchias hamesim min Torah. That's how you know tchias hamesim is happening from the Torah. Okay, now, another few. Shalim minim es Gamliel. This is a couple of interesting stories. The minin, who are the heretics, they asked Rabbi Gamliel the following question: how do you know that Hashem is going to bring the death back to life? Amar lehem min Torah, min Neviim, min Ksuvim. He says, I can tell you a few sources from the Torah, from Navi, and from Ksuvim. Velo kiblu mimenu, and they didn't accept any of his sources. Min Torah. What about the Torah ones? The pasuk says, "Vayomer Hashem al Moshe." Hashem says to Moshe, "Kinach shochavim avosecha v'kam." Right now, the pasuk, the full pasuk, if you read that pasuk, that's a kind of like a misplaced comma, right? That the pasuk is here. It says, "V'gama kimosi es brisi itam." I'm going to uphold the bris with you. No, wrong one. Zion, sorry. Vayomer Hashem Moshe says, "Moshe hinchos shochevim avosecha." You're going to lie with your fathers. V'kam, and you will get up. V'kam ha'amazeh, and this nation is going to get up. V'zana acharei Elohei nechar, and they're going to stray after other gods. Now. And it will get up. Well, I don't know what's doing. It's beeping. So what is it? What is the vikam? So either the vikam goes on the next phrase, vikam ha'am, the nation is going to get up and they're going to go astray, or you can read it with the previous line, which is that Moshe, you're going to lie with your fathers and you're going to get up. So amrulo, they said, v'dama vikam ha'amazeh v'zana. It says, how do you know that the word vikam goes to the previous part of the pasuk? Maybe it goes to the next part of the pasuk. We don't accept that proof. Okay, I'll try again. Mina Neviim. We'll go to the Navi. Tichsiv, the pasuk says, "Yichyu meisecha nevelasi yikumun hakitzu veranenu shochne afar kital oros talecha ve'eretz rifaim tapil." So the pasuk says, let me make sure I read it properly. Right, your yichyu meisecha, the dead are going to live, and nevelasi yikumun. And the corpses will rise up, will get up. Hekitzu veranu shochne afar. The ones that they will arise up, wake up, and they will be joyous. Those that lie in the dirt. Kital oros talecha, because your dew, the dew of the Torah and mitzvos, is like a light for the dead. The eretz rifaim tapil, and the land will fall away, and from that will rise the buried dead, right? So the dead will rise out of the graves. So that's a pasuk in Navi, which is by Yeshaya, in Sefer Yeshaya, about La'asid Lavo. Now, La'asid Lavo is the end of days, right? There's Mashiach times, and then there's La'asid Lavo, which is a further future time, which we're going to discuss some of the potential times for that. That's the Tchias Hamesim time. That's exactly right. So this is the Yasud Lava. This is the end of days times, and the dead are going to rise. So that's what Yeshaya is talking about. So you see clearly that his prophecy, his nevuah, has to do with Tchias Hamesim. So, well, maybe the Dilma Meishim Shehechia Yechezkel. Maybe this isn't a future. Maybe this isn't a prophecy that at the end of the days that the dead will rise. But maybe this is a prophecy of something that's going to happen in the relatively near future. Yechezkel is going to come upon a valley of dry bones, and Yechezkel is going to have a nevuah, and he's going to bring these bones back to life. And so, sure, there's going to be a moment when the dead come back to life, but that's not referring to Tchias Hamesim eventually. That's talking about the occurrence of Yechezkel and the dry bones. So maybe that's what that's talking about. So we'll give you that one. There was a dead coming back to life, but it already it happened already. Okay? And
what do you mean the dry bones coming back to life?
Oh, you're going to hear that story. It's a good one. It's a good story. Hang on a page and a half or so, right? Page and a half. Then we'll get to the story of the dry bones, who those dry bones were, and what Yechezkel did. So Dichsiv, as we learn now, what about the Ksuvim? Dichsiv pasuk says, V'chikeich keyayin hatov. This is from Shir HaShirim, and it is a parable love song. And so it sounds like a very romantic ideas, but each of the words and phrases is a parable for deep concepts. So v'chikeich kiyayin hatov, your cheeks are like fine wine. Holoich l'dodi meisharim. V'dovev sif seyeshemim. My beloved goes to the upright, and the lips of those that are lying asleep mutter. And so therefore you see that since the lips of those that are asleep, those that are dead, so they're going to be moving. So that means they're going to come back to life and be able to speak. Okay, so Vidilma. So maybe that doesn't prove anything. Maybe maybe all they're doing is their lips are moving. They're still dead, but their lips are moving. Well, why would their lips move if they were dead? Rabbi Yochanan, because we know what Rabbi Yochanan said. And Rabbi Yochanan said, "Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadak." Rabbi Yochanan said the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadak. Kol mi shenemar halacha bishmo be'olam hazeh. Anybody who says something in the name of another person in this world, sif sosov dovavos bekever, the person who you're saying in the name of, his lips move in the grave, right? He gets credit for you teaching over what he said. That's why it's very important to say something over in the name of a person who said it.
Or there could be bugs that's moving his lips for him.
Yeah, but that's not what Rabbi Yochanan said. That could be somebody else, not Rabbi Yochanan. Shenemar, the pasuk says, Dovev sif seyeshenim. So he went through his psukim, didn't prove. Ad she'amar lehem mikra. So finally, he showed them this pasuk, and this one they had no answer for. Asher nishba Hashem lavosechem laseis lahem. Right, it says that Hashem made a promise in order to say Devarim. Right, that Hashem is going to. That he's going to give the land. He made a promise to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that he's going to give the land to them, and he is going to give it to them. Lachem lo nemar, it doesn't say that he's giving it to you. Elo lahem, it's going to give it to them. Mikan l'tchias hamesim min haTorah. That's where we know tchias hamesim is in the Torah. Okay, so they didn't have much answer to that one, because it's a good point. Grammatically, the words don't make sense if you don't learn it other way. V'yesh omer min hamikra hazeh. Amar lehem. Some say it came from, he had a different pasuk. He used this one. You are connected, or I guess cleaving to Hashem, your God. You are all alive today. Right? Chaim kulchem hayom. So explains. So pshita. So that's pretty obvious. You guys are alive today. I mean, otherwise, how would you be here? So what does the pasuk mean? Techaim kulchem hayom. Ella afilu biyom shekol ha'olam kulam mesim atem chaim. What it's saying is that even on the day in the future that the entire rest of the world has died, you will still be alive. Ma hayom kulchem kayamin af liyom haba kulchem kayam. Just like today you are alive, so too in the world to come, all of you Jews will still be alive. So that is the Hashem's promise.
That was said by Moshe Rabbeinu.
That was said by Moshe Rabbeinu. That's correct. That is during his speech that on his last day of his life in Dvarim.
Right.
Okay, Shalu Romim as Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. So the Romans asked Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya a question. Minayin shekadosh baruch hu mechayim mesim v'yodea ma she'osid lios. How do we know two things? How do you know Hashem is going to bring the dead back to life? And how do you know that Hashem knows the future? So Amar Lahu Tarvaihu min Amikra Hazeh. I said I could tell you both of them from the one pasuk. Now it's interesting. Sometimes you see like they ask the question. He could have answered from a multiple pasukim, but sometimes like they like to test themselves and see if they can get both answers in one pasuk. It sounds like. So he says, here's Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya's answer. Shneimar pasuk says, V'yomer Hashem el Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe, Hincha shochevi mosecha v'kam amazeh v'zona. He says, you see, it says right in the pasuk. Hashem says, Moshe, you're going to lie down, you're going to die, and you will get up. Then the nation is going to go after other things. And so how does Hashem know the nation's going to go after other things? Because he knows the future. How do you know that Moshe Rabbeinu is going to lie and he's going to get back up? The answer is there's Tchias HaMesim. So you see from the same pasuk. V'dilma. So he says, well, wait a second. V'dilma v'kam ha'amazeh v'zana. So he says, okay, what? But I mean, how do you know that part? V'kam goes to the last part of the first part of the pasuk. Maybe goes to the last part of the pasuk. Everyone's a grammatical expert in those times, even the Romans. Amar lehu. So he said to him, Nakotu miha palga beyadaichu, deodem masha asid lios. He says, okay, fine, I'll give you that. But if that's the case, at least you got to give me the fact that Hashem knows the future. At least that you got to give me. Okay, so fine, fair enough.
It's such a weird question. Right? If they accept the existence of God, and they're still asking, how do you know God knows the future? Right? It's a weird question. It's because they don't. Their God's the Havdil.
I was going to say, right,
future.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I was going to say that from the Roman perspective, their gods are not that way, right? Their gods are very much interactive.
Yes.
Itmar Nami. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said as follows. Rabbi Yochanan said, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Minan Shekadosh Baruch Hu Mechayim Mesim Yodem Masha Also Lios. How do you know that Hashem is going to bring the dead back to life at the end of the days, and He knows what will be in the future? Shenemar, the pasuk says, Hinei Hincho Shochev Im Avosecha V'Kam, etc. And so that this statement of Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Yochanan ben Yochai, was also said in his name, as was said in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya when he spoke to the Romans. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Amar Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi. Bedavar says Yafti Sifrei Minim Shahayu Omrim Ein Tchias Hamesim Min HaTorah. So there was this I guess this thing he was debating with the Sifrei Haminim. They had a dispute, right? They were saying in Tchias Hamesim in Torah, there's no such place. There's nothing in the Torah that refers to Tchias Hamesim, and he says I dispute that perspective that those minim, those heretics have. So Amarti lahem ziyaftem toraschem velo halisem biyodchem klum. He says you guys stole the Torah, right? They were reading the Torah illegally. They were studying the Torah, and they said, look, nothing there. And he said, look, you've stolen it, but it didn't help you at all. You don't understand any of it. If you came out of reading the Torah and came out that there's no Tchias Hamesim in the Torah, Harei Homer, the pasuk says, He kares tikares hanefesh ahi avona ba. So it says by the Aveira, somebody who's Ovid Avodah Zarah, it says, He kares tikares, that you will surely be cut off. And it's a double language. So, Hikares tikares bolam hazeh. So it means that hikares tikares. We're not picking on the double language yet. Hikares tikares, you will surely be cut off. Bolam hazeh. That's a punishment in this world. Avona ba, but the avera is still going to be there. Li'emas. When will that avera still be? Lav liolam haba. Shouldn't that still be in the world to come? In other words, you got to have at least two worlds in order to have hikares tikares and the avona still be there. Amalei Rav Papa Abaye. So Rav Papa says to Abaye, then okay, v'lema lehu tarvayhu mihikares tikares. So he says, well, what about the double language? Let's pick on the double language as hikares tikares. Let's explain it like that. So inhu havu amru le dibra Torah kilashim bnei adam. He said he didn't want to use that answer as the double language, which is the one that I went to first, right? Don't want to use that because they were holding potentially like the opinion that says that the Torah uses common speech, right? We often find that is our answer most yumos, right? That we have the Torah sometimes it says things in a double because that is the common way that humans will speak, and so therefore hikares wouldn't bother them necessarily. So he said hikares, and yet avon haba, that's our olam as in om haba. Okay, tonight. So, but that explanation is subject to a machlokas Tanaim, because some Tanaim do in fact learn it like that. Hikares tikares, hikares below mazeh. Hikares refers to being cut off in this world. Tikares liolam haba, and you will be cut off in the next world. Div Rabbi Akiva, as Rabbi Akiva says. Amar lo Rabbi Yishmael says, haba hikares ti. I skipped. V'halo kvar nemar es Hashem hu megadef v'nichrisa. What about the pasuk before? It says Hashem, He is blaspheming and He should be cut off. So that means that He's going to be cut off. Then you get to the next pasuk, and He should be cut off and be cut off again. So the question is, you understand there's two worlds, but there's no three worlds. So how do you have kares three times over a course of two psukim?
Maybe there is. There's Gehenim that's here, and then there's Olam.
Well, they don't entertain the possibility, right? But Gehenna wouldn't be its own olam, I guess is their presumption, right? Olam hazeh and olam haba. Gehenna is a I don't know that maybe it's that they don't consider Gehenna a world. In essence, the Gehenna is a punishment location for kapara, which is sort of a mid stop.
Why did you just throw into a volcano then?
Well, that's not this world, right? So, okay. Anyway, Ella v'nichrasa b'olam hazeh, he koris liolam haba. So rather v'nichrasa, he says, Rabbi Shmuel says v'nichrasa in the first pasuk is this world. He koris is next world, and he koris tikares dibra Torah kiloshan b'nei adam. So then he says he koris he isn't bothered by the double language. That's the lashon b'nei adam. Okay, but now bein Rabbi Shmuel bein Rabbi Akiva avon haba ma'avdilei. The problem is that according to the way that we explained it at first, we said that Hikaris was the first world and Avon Haba was the second world. Now, according to Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel, both of them are either learning Hikaris, or they're learning Venichrasa from the previous pasuk and Hikaris. But nobody's using Avon Haba for anything. So what do they do with that pasuk? So the answer is Lechadetanya. They use it for the following brisa. Yachol afilo asa tshuva. You might think that you get cut off and you lose your olam haba even if you've done tshuva. Talmud lomar, therefore the pasuk says avon haba, he still has his avera. Lo amarti ela bizman shavon haba. The only time you lose your olam haba, once you've already gotten your punishment, is if you are still doing the avera. You have not done tshuva. But if you've done tshuva, so then the one avera that you've done doesn't cut you off in this world and the next world. Sufficient that you've done tshuva, you received your punishment in this world, and then you have your chelik in olam haba. It wouldn't remove it. That's what Avon Haba says. Okay, Sha'ala Cleopatra Malka. So Queen Cleopatra pops up in the Gemara here. You go, right? Make a note of it, right? Everybody asks, where's Queen Cleopatra show up? So the Cleopatra, she says, the Queen Cleopatra asked Rabbi Meir a question. Amra Yadana Dechaye Shichvei Dechsiv V'yatzitzu Meir Ke'esev Haaretz. Okay, so he says, we understand that the people who are dead are going to come back to life. We got you guys. You guys Jews believe that? We're on board with that. Ella, but my question is like this, Cleopatra's question. Keshehain omdin, when the dead come back to life, omdin arumin obil v'ushehem. Will they be dressed or not? Right? I'm sure somebody's kid has asked that question, right? What will they be wearing when they come back to life? So Amar La, so he says, I'll tell you, Kal v'chomer michita. He says, look, you can draw a kal v'chomer from wheat. Ma chita shenikbera aruma yotza bekama levushin. Look, when you plant a wheat seed, right, it's just a kernel, put it in the ground, it comes up, and it's covered in sheaves and layers. Tzadikim shenikbarim bilvushehan. Tzadikim are buried clothed, right? Allah has come. For sure they're going to come back out of the ground all clothed. So don't worry about it. Be all wearing something. Amar lar Kesar l'Rama Gamliel. So the Caesar asked Rama Gamliel the following question. Amrisu deshach vechaye. So he says, you guys say that the people who have died will come back to life. Havu afra. But the problem is, people who have died are already decomposing, and they come back. They turn to dust. Right? They turn to decomposed already. So, right? Everybody wants to know this, right? I've had this kids ask the question, is everybody going to come back to life? Everybody going to be zombies? Is that what everybody's going to look like? They're going to dead come back to life. They're worried about this, right? So he says, okay, but they're all dust already. How can dust come back to life? It's dust. They're decomposed already. Tzadi Aleph, Amid Aleph on the top. Amrullah Barsei, so his daughter, the Caesar's daughter, she liked to jump in and answer the questions every once in a while. She jumps in, she says, Shafkei va'ana mahadrin alei. Says, it's okay, I got this one. She says, Shnei yotzrim yesh b'yireinu. She says, in our city, there are two guys that are able that make utensils. Echad yotzer min hamayim, v'echad yotzer min hatit. So he says, one of them can make utensils out of water, and the other one can make utensils out of plaster. Right? So, okay. So, which do you think is the greater thing to be able to do? I mean, making out of water is pretty amazing because it doesn't hold its shape, right? The plaster, at least, it holds its shape. So, right?
If you freeze it.
I was thinking freeze, but they didn't have freezing in Roman times, because very, very rarely did it really snow. So, Amarleh, he said to her, Amarla, Zesh Yotzer Min Hamayim. She's the guy who makes out of water. That would be really amazing. So Amrale, so she says, Min Hamayim Tsar, Min Hatit Losh Kol Shekain. So think about Hashem. Where does a human being come from? Human being comes from liquid from a man, right? That gets fertilized as a woman. So then a baby comes out. So that's how Hashem normally creates people. So the plaster, which is made of dust, that's for sure going to be able, Hashem can easily reform that into a human being. So it shouldn't be a problem. So that's the answer. So you tell your kids you don't have to worry about zombies coming back. Hashem is going to be able to form everybody into healthy looking people.
Caesar's daughter.
That's correct. Caesar's daughter's answer. Okay. Debei Rabbi Yishmael Tana, in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael, they taught it as follows: Kal v'chomer kli zechuches. Says you got to think of it like glass. Ma kli zechuches sha'amol and beruach basar v'dam. So look, the glass is blown by a human being, right? They do glass blowing. So nishperu, if it breaks, yesh lahen takana, you can fix it. It's a human being blowing it, but you can still fix it. Basar v'dam sheberuchu shal kadosh baruch hu, but a human being that is blown by Hashem, right? The spirit of a human being is blown into us by Hashem. For sure, it's not broken permanently. Right? It's not try to figure out exactly how the material has an impact, but the mashal is there to contemplate for right how that works. Amar le'ahu mina l'Rabbi Ami. So there was a certain heretic who said to Rabbi Ami, Amrisu d'shach v'chaye. So you say that people who die will come back to life. V'ha havu afra, but they can't turn into dust. V'afra mikachaye, and he asked the same question that Caesar asked, and you can't bring dust back to life. So Amar Le, so he said back to him, he says, you know what it's like? He says, imagine a human king. Shamar la'avdav, he said to his servant, Lechu ubenu li palterin gedolim b'makom she'ein mayim v'afar. Go to like a difficult place. Go to a place to build me a palace where there's no water and there's no dirt, right? Got to build it from scratch. Hochul banu also. So they went and they built in this palace. They had to import all the materials. It's difficult. Liyamim naflu. After many days, the palace eventually fell into ruin. Amar lehem. So he told people, Chazru banu also b'makom sheyesh from mine. Now I want you to rebuild me a palace, but this time there's a nice place where there's plenty of building materials. There's water. There's dirt to be able to make a nice palace. So Amrulo, so they said to him, Einanu Yecholin. So he says, we can't, it's too hard. So Kaslaim, so the king got mad at them. He said to him, B'makom she'ein mayim v'afar b'nisem. So he says, look, you were able to build it when you had no building materials and no resources. V'achshav sheyesh mayim v'afar achas kama v'kama. What kind of complaint? Now you've got all the building materials and now you say you can't do it? So there's the point Hashem's making. Like when a human being is born, there's no materials to build from, and yet Hashem's able to build a human being out of nothing, right? But then when a person dies, so he has a corpse, so at least he can rebuild from that. It should be easier for Hashem to be able to rebuild from that. And if you don't believe that, go into the valley, ure'ei achbar. There's a mouse that's out there. Shayom chetzio basar v'chetzio adama. It is a half flesh and half dirt. L'machar hishritz v'nasa kula basar, and eventually it is going to be able to combine together and be a completely flesh. Right? It's able to turn from dirt into flesh. There's some kind of a creature that was able to do it. Now. This is one of these question marks, right? Rashi says, he's the Nachbar Shekorn Ashkarol, right? V'yesh b'minon she'ein nivron al yedei toloda. He says this is spontaneous generation. Rashi holds of spontaneous generation. Here it is. I'm not sure we got a doctor here to be able to debate this, right? But some kind of creature that would be able to actually form it. And that was his proof. You can go and find this creature that grows out of the dirt. Right, I know that Steinsaltz. This is one of the things that Rabbi Steinsaltz, I think, was gotten to Chirim over having a position that sort of was that sometimes these Gemaras are not necessarily to be taken. That was their opinion back then. They thought that was the case. There was a creature that looked that way, but it really wasn't that way. But is using it as an illustration. And most opinions don't like that you're criticizing the Gemara's, the knowledge of the Rabbanan, whether they're scientific knowledge. Clearly, there are some Gemaras the scientific knowledge seems to be from those times, but other times the Gemara seems to have knowledge of things that are beyond things that they should have been able to know, but they were able to know those things through the Torah. So it's something difficult to be able to discern when that line gets crossed, when they're quoting from the scientific knowledge of the time, or whether they're quoting from something that they had a tradition in. But in any event, He knew of this mouse, so told him to go take a look. Okay, Tomer Rizman Meruba Allah Lehar Ureisha Yom Einbo Elachilazon. I says I got another way for you to look. Take a look. Go over to this mountain. You'll see there's not a single snail. None of the chilazons are on this area. Right? Einbo Elachilazon. There's only one chilazon here. Lemachar. Then tomorrow Yardu Geshamim. The rain fell. And Nismali Kulo Chilazonos, and all of the snails came out, and look at where all of them came from. He was indicating spontaneous generation. You see, the snails grew out of the rocks, out of the thin air. I guess they were probably someplace, and the rain drove them out of wherever they were hiding or something, I would presume. But that was his point. It's not clear, like he had a min who was trying to start up with him, so he could have used this as a, right?
As a metaphor.
Or sort of a trick to push them off. You're saying something's impossible, but here's a whole bunch of things that you can't explain, and it happens, right? So Amar Le'ahu mina Geviha ben Pesisa. So there was another min who approached Geviha ben Pesisa one time. Vaylechon chayavya damrisun mesi chayin dechayin mesi de mesi chayin. So he says, you guys, woe to you guys. He says that, right? You guys, that you guys say that the dead are going to come to life. He says the people who are alive die. So if people who are alive die, how could you say that things that are dead will come back to life? That's not the way of the universe. The way of the universe is that things live and then they die. So Amar Le, Geviha ben Pesisa says back, Vaylechon, woe to you, that are chayavya, that are wicked, damrisun mesi lochayin, that you say that the people who die don't come back to life. There are people who are never alive, and then all of a sudden they're alive, right? That people come from no place. So chayi lo kol shekain. So people, people who were alive, lo kol shekain, for sure, people who were alive will be able to come back to life. That sounds simpler. So Amar Le, so he answers back, Chayvaya karisli, you called me somebody who's a wicked person? Ika imna ba'itna bach, upashitna lak mosech. Now, to introduce that line, Geviha ben Pesisa had a hunchback, or had some kind of a non-straight back. So he said, you called me a wicked name, I'm upset, so if I would get up, I would kick you so hard, I'd straighten you up. Right? So that's like chiropractic work, right? He's offering unsolicited chiropractic help. So Amar Le, to which Geviha ben Pesisa said back to him, Ima ta'osa kain, if you would do that, so then Rofe Uman Tikra, I would call you a masterful doctor, Uschar har beitito, and I would pay you a lot of money. Good answer, right? So Tana Rabbanan. Rabbi Son. Be'ezra ba'arba b'Nisan, in is nitilu dimusnoi mi Yehuda umi Yerushalayim. So on the 24th of Nisan, the
About a month away.
yeah, the people there were people who came to complain to Alexander Mokdon. They came to him to complain about the Jewish people. They wanted to be able to get Yerushalayim and Yehuda from the Jewish people. So they're trying to. So it's coming up. Yeah, the 24th of Nisan coming up. So you can mark that day. So they marked that day on their calendar, and it was a miraculous occurrence that they were able to win the argument, win the debate, and be able to keep the Jewish people. Alexander was a supporter of the Jewish people overall. And so when people would come to try to convince him otherwise, right, it was good that they were able to argue the Jewish opinion and save the day and keep his opinion on their side.
He was pro-Israel, basically.
He ended up being very pro-Israel. This is a famous story of Shimon HaTzadik, where that Shimon HaTzadik came out to greet him when he was coming to attack Yerushalayim, and Alexander got off his horse and bowed to him, right? He said, because this is the vision of this person. I see him every time I go into battle. This guy comes to me in a dream and tells me I'm going to win. So he had this vision. So anyway, they had a good relationship, but it wasn't automatic. And people would come and complaining about the Jews. He had to be able to answer it. So here's what happens. Keshabo b'nei Afrikaya ladun im Yisrael. The people of Africa came to start up with the Jewish people. They said, well, we want Eretz Yisrael, right? Lifnei Alexander's Mokdon. They came to Alexander Mokdon. Amrulo, they said to him, Eretz Canaan Shalonuhi. The land of Canaan, right? It's not Yisrael, Palestine, or whatever they call it. Before it was Eretz Yisrael, it was Canaan, and it was ours, right? Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, Eretz Canaan. Look at the Torah. The Torah says Eretz Canaan ligvuloseha. Right, this is the land of Canaan and its borders. Uknan avuan dehanu inchihava, and Canaan was our ancestor. Right, Canaan was one of the African. The African people come from Canaan, so it's really ours, and they took it from us. So Amar Lahu Gavia ben Pesisa lechachamim. So Gavia ben Pesisa comes along. He says to the sages, Tenuli rishus ve'elech ve'adoniman. Give me a permission. I'll be the one. I'll go argue with Alexander Mokdon on the case. Lifnei Alexandros Mokdon. If they win, so Amru Hedyot Shibanu Nitzachtem. You're going to say, look, you got some schlepper, you beat some, didn't beat one of the big rabbis, you beat some schlepper. And if I win, if I beat them, Amru Lehem Torah's Moshe Nitzachtem. And everyone can say, the Torah won. So then, either way, you guys, it's a win-win situation. You've got nothing to lose. Let me go argue it. So Nasnu L'Rishos, so they gave him permission. He'll go and argue it. V'halach v'dani. He went to court to battle it out within Alexander's court. Amar lechem, he said to him, Mechan abtem meviim raya. What is your source? So Amru lo min Torah. They said, the Torah, you got to believe us. The Jewish people, you believe the Torah. It's from the Torah. Amar lehen, he said, okay, afani lo evi lachem raya al min Torah. Okay, I'll bring a proof also for the Torah. Shneim pasuk says, Vayomer arur kanan eved avadim. Cursed is Canaan, he is a slave of slaves. He's going to be a slave of slaves to his brothers. Eved shekanan nechasim. Eved lemi unechasim lemi. Let's say an Eved acquires goods. Who does the slave belong to? And who does his goods belong to?
The slave belongs to the owner.
So the slave belongs to the owner, so does everything he acquires. So, okay, fine. You want to say that Canaan is in charge of it? Great. We own Canaan, we own the land. Below, not only that, El Shari Kama Shanim Shelo Avodateng. Not only that, but you know what? You haven't worked for us in a long time. So you kind of owe us back pay, right? You owe us work. So Amar Lehem, Alexander Smalka, Hichziru L'Tshuva. So they said, okay, great. Turn back to the Africans. What do you guys have to say to that? Amrulu Tanalan Uzman Shloshi Yamim. So he says, give us 3 days. We'll think about the answer. Okay. Nasal Lehem Zman. He gave him 3 days. Badku v'lo matzu. Tshuva. So they searched around. They could not find a good answer. Miyad Baruchu. They ran away. Ve'inichu sedosehen kashen zros v'karmehen kashen netuos. And they left their fields planted, and they left their vineyards planted. So therefore, and V'os Shana in that year, Shvius Haisa. That was a sabbatical year, and the Jews had plenty to eat that year as a result of the debate. Shuv Pamachas.
They could have answered, that's something that Noah said, but who said that is...
That it butts,
well,
right?
Noah said doesn't mean that's true forever. You could have said that. I just made that up.
It's a good thing you weren't around back then.
Shuv Pamachas. Another time, Bo B'nai Mitzrayim Ladun Yisrael. The Egyptians came to start up with the Jews. Lifnei Alexander Smokdon, right? Alexander of Macedonia apparently had a court that people could, make their international court. They could make their land claims. Apparently, Amrulo. So they said to him, Harehu Omer. Pasuk says in the Torah, Hashem nasan es chen ha'am be'inei Mitzrayim. Right? The Hashem had the nation find favor in the eyes of Mitzrayim. Vayish alum, and the Jews they borrowed utensils when they were leaving Mitzrayim. Tnu lanu kesef ezav. Give us some silver and gold. Shinatalta. So he says, okay, fine. Tnu lanu kesef ezav shinatalta minu. Now we want our stuff back. You borrowed it when you left Mitzrayim. We'd like to be repaid. Give us our stuff back. So Amar Gvia ben Pesisa. Gvia ben Pesisa says, L'chachamim, Tnuli Rishus, give me permission. Ve'elech v'adunim, I'll go fight with them with Alexandros. Imi natzchuni, if they beat me, Amnulem hedyot shebanu nitzachtem. You could say a regular person. You beat a regular person. Ve'ani natzech, if I win osam, Amru lahem Torah's Moshe Rabbeinu nitzchatchem. That it was the Torah that beat you. Nasnu Rishus, they said, go ahead. V'halach v'donim, and he went went to court against them. Amar lehen mehechan atem mevi'in raya. Where are you bringing your proof from? Amar lo min Torah. He said from the Torah. Amar lehen afani lo evi lechem raya. Element Torah also bring from the Torah. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Moshe b'nei Yisrael asher yoshuv Mitzrayim shloshim shana v'arba me'or shana. Fine. We were in Mitzrayim a slave 430 years. Tenu lanu schar avoda shel shishim ribo. We had 600,000 people, 430 years. Take out the calculator. Shishi bad to Mitzrayim, Shoshim Shana, V'arba Me'el Shana, 600,430 years. Okay, you pay us the wages for 600,000 people for 430 years, back pay, and we will return the utensils we borrowed. Certain to think that we owe you, that you owe us more than we owe you. Amar lehen Alexander Smokton. So Alexander Macedonia turned back to them and says, Hechsir lo tshuva, go ahead and give him an answer. Amar lo tnunu lam zman shlosha yom, give us 3 days. Nasan lehem zman, they gave him time. Bad kuv lo so they couldn't find a tshuva. Miyad hinichu sadosehem kashem zroos. They left their fields planted. V'karmehem kashem netuos, and their vineyards when they were planted ubarchu, and they ran away. Vosa shana shvias haisen, was a shemitah year. Now, think about this. How old was Alexander when he died?
He's in his 30s.
Right? In his 30s.
Yeah, right.
So Shemitah year comes every 7 years, and Alexander couldn't have been king of the world until he was in his early 20s or so. Yeah. So I'm assuming these things happened at the same year, because otherwise, like the Jews had what to eat on every single Shemitah year. There aren't enough Shemitah years, right, for these stories to keep happening. Third time, V'shuv pamachas, another time, Bo'o b'nei Yisrael, b'nei Keturah, ladun im Yisrael. The b'nei Yishmael, the Arabs came. And the children of Keturah, they came and they said, hey, you know what? Lifnei Alexander Smokton. They came before Alexander Smokton. Amru lo, Eretz Kanan shalanu v'shalachem. We need a two-state solution, right? Now I go with the two-state solution, because we got to split it. We were also children of Avraham, and it was promised to Avraham, we want our share in Eretz Yisrael. Tichsev Pasuk says, Ve'ela toldos Yishmael ben Avraham, Uksev Eila toldos Yitzchak ben Avraham, right? The Yitzchak and Yishmael were both kids. Amar lehen Gevia ben Pesisa. Gevia ben Pesisa says, great, I'll take care of the Lachem. Tenuli Rishus, Ve'ech vaduni mahem, lifnei Alexander Smoktem, Minatzchuni, Amru hedyot shebanu nitzachtem, Ve'emani natzeach osam, Amru lahem, Torah's Moshe Rabbeinu nitzachtem. We know his spiel, right? Give me a chance to go fight him. Nasnu Rishus. So they gave him permission to go. Halach v'donim, when he went and he argued and debated them. Amru lahen, he said to them, Mehechanatem mevi and raya, what is your proof? Amru lo min Torah, they said, the Torah is our proof. Amru lahen, he said to them, Afani lo ve'raya el min Torah. Fine, I'll use the Torah also. Shneim Pasuk says, Vayitin Avraham es kol asher lo liyitzchak ve'livnei apilag shim asher lo Avraham. Right, that Avraham gave everything he had to Yitzchak and to the children of the pilag shim that Avraham had. Nasan Avraham matonis, he gave them presents. Right. So he gave everything to Yitzchak, and then the Bnei Pilagshim, he gave them presents. Av shenoson agitin libanov bechayev v'shiger zeh me'al zeh klum yesh lazeh al zeh klum. So he says, look, if Avram distributed his possessions, he wrote a will essentially, right? He gave everybody, right? He wrote a contract for his children while he was still alive, and he says, you're not supposed to get anything, and the Pilagshim are supposed to go away, and here are some presents, and he gave everything to Yitzchak. So okay, so therefore, what's your claim? So that was his argument back. Okay, so my matanos. So we want to know, by the way, what are the presents that he gave to the other children? Amir Rabbi Yirmiyah Barabba, Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Malamid Shemasar Lehem Shem Tuma. He gave them the name of Tuma. Basically, gave them black magic and kishuf and those sorts of things, right? So some people say the idolatrous religions of the East are like, potential.
That's a very thoughtful gift.
Right? So that's exactly a very thoughtful gift. He gave them the kishuf and Ma'aseh Shedim and those kinds of things. He gave them the power over those things. Amar le Antoninus le Rebbe. So Antoninus says to Rebbe, Guf neshama yichol liftor atzman min adin. He says, I'm thinking about what you Jews believe about the soul and the body coming together in this world, and I think that the soul and the body can get off from being liable for any averos. So let's think about this. Ketzad, how would it work? Guf omer neshama chatas. He says, look, the body can say, it wasn't my fault that we did averos. It was the neshama's fault. Why? Shem yom shapir shemimeni, because once the neshama left the body, I'm lying here like a dead stone. I'm not doing any averos. So the living life, the living soul, that's where the averos come from, right? Kevin domim bekever. I'm lying here in the grave. Not my fault. Neshama omeres, the neshama is in Shemayim. What it will say, guf chata. It's the body's fault. Shem yom shepirashti mimenu. As soon as I separated from the body, harini parachas ba'avir kitzipor. I'm flying up here in the air like a bird, and no averos, right? So you see, it's everyone can point to the other one. Without the guf, the neshama's not doing averos. Without the neshama, the guf's not doing averos. So they can get each other off. Amar le, so he answered him back. So I'll tell you what this is like. This is Lamelch Basar V'Dam. Imagine a human king. He's got a nice, beautiful orchard. V'haya lo tzadi alpha beis. Bechoros nos, he has beautiful first fruits. V'hoshev bo shnei shomrim, and he puts 2 guards in this field. Echad chiger v'echad suma. One is lame and one is blind. Great, it's great guards.
That's
So
what I like to hear.
he's got a lame one and a blind one. Amar lo chiger l'suma. So the lame one says to the blind one, because Norsanira, I see some beautiful first fruits over there. Bepardes in this orchard. Bo v'her kiveni, come and carry me over to the fruits. V'naviyam lachem, we'll bring them over here and we'll eat them. Rachav chiger agabe suma. So the lame person rides on the blind person. The lame person tells the blind person where to go. Ve'aviyum, and they brought him over. V'achlum, and they ate them. Liyamim. So several days later, Pardes, the owner of the orchard, comes. Amar lehen bichoros nos heichonim. Where are my nice fruits? So Amar lo chiger. So the lame person said, "Klum yeshler goyim lahoich banai." Not me. I got no legs. Can't be my fault. Amar lo suma. So the blind person says, "Klum yeshli anayim liros." I couldn't see where they were. I couldn't be me. Ma'asa. So what did he do? Here kiv chiger al gabe suma. So the owner, he put the blind person on top. He put the lame person on top of the blind person. V'dano sam ka'echad, and he said, "You guys are one person, and I'm judging you as one person because together you did it." That's why Hashem brings back Tchias Mesim. He brings the soul back to the body. V'dano sam ka'echad, and he's going to judge them as one. Because either one, individually, you're right, they've got a claim. But by bringing the Tchias HaMesim, Hashem is able to judge them together. Shenemar, Yikar el Shemayim Me'al, Hashem is going to call to the heavens above, El Haaretz Ladin, and the land below to Ladin Amo in order to judge his nation. Yikar el Shemayim Me'al, Zu Neshama, he calls up to the heavens to get the Neshama. El Haaretz Ladin Imo, Zaguf, that's the body he calls from the ground. Amrle Antoninus le Rebbe. Antoninus said to Rebbe, why does the sun rise in the east and set in the west? Amarle. So he answered back, if it was the other way around, you would ask me that question. So what kind of question is that? So Amarle, so he says back, this is what I mean to ask. Why does it have to set in the west? Okay, it rises. Why doesn't it go back to where it came from? Why does it have to go to the west?
Because the earth is always spinning.
Correct. But that is a good question about whether they knew that the earth was spinning or whether this was from their perception, the sun was moving, or still, it doesn't really make any practical difference. Whatever, the earth could spin and then turn in the other direction. Hashem could set up the world any way he wants, right? But why did he set up that way? Some are like, because Hashem's Shekhinah is in the west, and this way, the sun can bow to Hashem as it's setting in the night. Shneimar pasuk says, "It's Shemayim l'chomesh tachavim." All the stars of the heavens bow to you. Amarlei v'teisi ad palga derakia v'titen shama v'teol. So why doesn't it do like what human beings do? They go. You don't come all the way up to the king and bow in his face. You come up halfway, you bow, and then disappear. So the sun doesn't have to set. It could just because the way that they had believed, we'll see in other Gemaras, is that there was the stars are in this sphere, and the sun could just go up halfway and then duck behind the sphere of the stars, and then the sun will disappear. So why does it have to continue and go all the way around to the west before it circles back behind the sphere and come about the other side, right? So the answer is Mishum Poalim, Mishum Over Drachim, because the workers and the people who are traveling. It's nice that it sunsets because it gets darker and darker slowly. So rather than getting dark suddenly, and then people would get stuck in the middle of their.
That's the problem in the wintertime.
Right, so yeah, you go. So therefore that's a good. Go up to the middle and then just like a light bulb go out. Exactly. Hop behind the dome of the stars. That is exactly that's how I understand the Gemara, right? That's what they're suggesting. Right?
Where does it get the idea that Hashem's Shekhinah is in the west?
That's a good question too. Let's see if he says.
Is it because the Kodesh Kodashim is in the west?
It is. He says, Mitzias Gashmis, Sheshech Lomar Ala B'tzad Zeh B'tzad Zeh, Look, what's makom klal? Mikol makom yesh makom shehu yoser mikobel el es kvod hashchina vehu tzad mariv the maral.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't know. You guys are the Chassidim around here, right? I'm the Litvish guy. I don't know that.
Well, Arsh will just,
For me, I'm like, okay, yeah.
Arsh will just take up Moshe's point over here.
Yes,
the
that-
divine presence rests on the holy ark in the Holy of Holies.
There you
which
go.
is at the western end of the base of
There you go. There you go.
That's 3 points.
Vamral Antigonus Luder Rebbe. And Tanino said to Rebbe, Neshama me'emasai nitna ba'adam. When does the soul come into a person? Right? Did I have this comes up in the news a couple of times? When does a soul enter a person? Mishas pekida or mishas yetzira? Is it from the time that the fertilization, or is it from the time that the baby is formed? Right? Now, it's not birth. That isn't the question. For sure, it's not the birth, but the question is the body. Is the body formed already? Do you need a formed body for the neshama to enter? Or is the neshama and the guf mixed together immediately at fertilization? That's the question.
But isn't the neshama with the baby inside the body? It's a woman.
Correct. So that's for sure. Correct. So there's no question that the neshama and the guf at some point inside, while the baby's still inside, is definitely mixed, right? But I guess you'd have to wait till after the first trimester, right? And say that at least that point the body's formed enough that you could, or is it immediately? So Amarle, Mishas Yitzira, he said it made sense that it's already when the baby's formed, right? I don't need a doctor, right? It's a good thing we have a doctor here. This, let's say, right? At the end of the first trimester, right? Right? Makes sense?
Doctor will know that.
Right? What?
Doctor will know that.
No, not about the neshama, but when we would have a guf, right? That doctor should know, right?
Not my kind of doctor.
Okay. Amarle, so he says, Efsher chaticha shel basar omedes shlosha yamim below melach ve'ena misreches. He says, I don't understand. Look, you leave a piece of meat around, and it rots. So if the baby didn't have a neshama, how could the body not rot? So clearly, Ella, Mishas Pekida must be that the neshama enters immediately, because that life force is what keeps the body that's what keeps the body regenerating. So Amar Rebbe, so Rebbe said, Davar Zelamar Antoninus. He says, yeah, Antoninus is right. That's a very good point. He has Moder. Antoninus said, Rebbe said, Antoninus is right. Mikra Misayo, and there's a pasuk that supports what Antoninus says. Pekudascha Shamra Ruchi. Right, that my establishment guards my spirit. Right, so I guess the spirit and the body being put together, and that's what guards the body and keeps the body from.
Rebbe could have answered him, what about an animal? An animal doesn't have a neshama, and an animal is not that.
The animal must have some kind of neshama.
It has some kind of ruach, but
That's
not
correct.
a higher level neshama.
Well, but that he doesn't have to say that, right? Has to be.
Isn't it the whole conversation is about the higher level of the human neshama?
I wasn't sure. I don't know. I'm not sure, right? Because I mean, especially from the answer, because it's a good point. I was only presuming it as a life force question.
Got it, okay.
Well, these people are not believers anyway.
The Antoninus from his questions, he sounds like he's pretty into it, right? Antoninus and Rebbe were close friends, right? So you see lots of.
You're like besties.
That's right. Where's you get your introduction to Talmud? You see Rebbe and Antoninus is in there. You'll read the stories of Rebbe and Antoninus there. So Rebbe is a high. Remember, Rebbe is the Nasi. He's a high-ranking noble from his country, and Antoninus is a noble from his country. They were, speaking on speaking terms, right? V'amar le Antoninus le Rebbe. Another time, Rebbe Antoninus said to Rebbe, "Me'emasai Yetzer Hara sholi b'adam." When does the Yetzer Hara come into a person? Now, this may be the question that you're really seeking to ask, right? So, Mishas Yetzira or Mishas Yetzia? Is it from the time that the baby is formed, or from the time the baby is born? So, Amar le Mishas Yetzira. So he said, it's from the time that the baby is formed. So Amar le Imkain Boet b'me'emo v'yotze. He says that doesn't make sense, because if that was the case, then the Yetzer Hara is always telling us to do the wrong things. The baby would always try to kick and get out of the mother too early, right? Because it's always trying to do the wrong thing.
Which always happens.
Well, it doesn't always happen. Eventually it happens, right? Eventually the baby leaves at the right time, right? But it's not supposed to kick and try to get out at the wrong time. El Mishasi, baby sits nice and still inside there. El Mishasi Tzia, right? That's when the Yetzer Hara comes in. So I'm a Rebbe, Davar Zel Amdeni Antoninus. It's a good point Antoninus makes. He taught me something. Mikra Misayo, and there's a pasuk that supports it. Shemar Pesach Chatas Rovetz. By the opening, sin is crouching. Reish Lakish Rami Ksif. Reish Lakish contrasts a few psukim. Bam Iver Upiseach Hara Violetus Yachdov. He says, in them, a blind and a lame person pregnant and give birth together. And then the pasuk says, V'az yidaleg ka'ayil pisech v'taron lashon ilaim ki nifka'u b'midbar mayim v'nachalim ba'arava. So he says, when on one pasuk it says that there will be a large contingency. The first pasuk that a large contingency is going to come back in the end of days, and in that large contingency, there's going to be blind people and lame people and people who are pregnant and giving birth, right? All kinds of people. And then this other pasuk says in Yeshaya that people, the lame people, are going to skip over the mountains like a ram, and the what do you call it? The mute will be able to sing songs. And just like because they'll be planted in the desert streams of water. So which is it? Are there going to be people who are ill and sick in the future times, or aren't there? So the answer is, how do you explain both psukim? Omdin b'muman umisrapim. When Tchias Mesim happens, people will get up with their blemishes, and then Hashem will heal them. But it will come in that order. They're not going to be brought back to life with, if let's say somebody had a limp, so it's not going to be brought back to life without it. They're going to come back with it, and then
or scar.
They are scarred. They will come back with it, and then they'll get healed. That's in Tchias Mesim. That's how it works. Ula Rami Ksiv Ula Katresvaim Psukim. Bila Hamavas Lenetzach Umacha Hashem Dim'a. That Hashem is going to swallow up death forever, and He's going to erase tears, may I'll call upon Him, from all of the faces. So that means there's going to be no death anymore. In Tchias Mesim, once Tchias Mesim happens,
It's a famous pasuk.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like in all the movies when they're at the funerals, the priest is always saying this, and all sadness will go away, and crying will cease.
That's right. So there you go.
There's even a song based on Umacha.
So there,
Yeah.
there you go. It's coming over here, right?
I was just curious, what if a baby is born because of some handicap?
Yes. So it seems like it doesn't imply that you go back to your best physical state. It says that all handicaps will be healed.
Okay.
Right? That's the
Those
pasuk.
who was born with a handicap, like
Correct.
walk,
Gets healed. Tchias Mesim come back
to
the way they were, and then it gets healed. Right? That's what the pasuk is saying. Then, now we're saying Hashem's going to get rid of all misa. There's no death. Then it says, Ki anar ben mea shana yamus, that if a young man will die, it will be when he's 100. Meaning that people will live for so long that if somebody dies when they're 100, people will consider them to be young.
Even with Mashiach comes,
Lo yeh misham od avel yamim, and there will be nobody who will die before their full days. So, one second. One pasuk seems to say there's no death anymore. The other pasuk seems to say that people will live exceptionally long. Which is it? What's going to be the case? So, lo kasha, kan be Yisrael, kan be ovdei kochavim. That talks about the Jews versus the non-Jews. The Jews will live forever. The non-Jews will live exceptionally long lives. So the question is, Vovdei Kochavim, my awesome. Why do you need non-Jews in the world to come at all? Because if Kol Yisrael Yishum Chelik Elamah, the Jews are getting reward for why are the non-Jews there? So the answer is because Hanach Tichsiv Behu, the pasuk says by them, Vamdu Zorim v'ra'u tzonchem u'bnei nechar ikrichem v'kormechem. That the non-Jews are supposed to be there in order to be able to take care of the sheep. They've got to take care of the land. They've got to harvest. They got work to do. Somebody's got to take care of the chores. So therefore, there will be exceptionally long-living non-Jews who will be there in order to live their lives to provide the economy, so that the Jews who will live forever will be able to benefit.
It's being recorded.
Yeah. Well, hey, I don't write it. I just repeat it. And if you've got a problem with it, go to the person who wrote it, or the being that wrote it, and he has no apologies.
People I love to come to YouTube now.
That's it.
It doesn't just mean sheep. It could mean like Bitcoin and all that
That's
sort of
good.
stuff.
They got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah,
That's correct.
It's gotten advanced now.
Rav Chisda Rami Ksiv. Rav Chisda contrasts the following psukim: V'chafra Havana ubosha achama kimalach Hashem tzvakos. That the sun, the moon is going to be covered up, and the sun will be embarrassed because here comes Hashem. And then another pasuk says, "V'haya or halavana." In the future times, the moon's light will be koracham, will be the light of the sun. V'orachama yeh shivasayim ka'or shivas hayamim, and the light of the sun will be 7 times the light that you would get for 7 days. Means 49 times, right? If I'm doing my math right. Lo kasha. So which is it? Is the sun and the moon's light going to be diminished, or is it going to be increased? So not a contradiction. Kanli Mos Mashiach, Kanli Olam Haba. This distinction between Mashiach's times and Olam Haba's times. In Mashiach's times, then the light of the sun and the moon are going to be increased, but then eventually, when Tchias HaMesim happens, the Hashem's light is going to be so glorious that in comparison, the sun and the moon's light will be much less in comparison. So it's stages of brightness. Shmuel, now according to Shmuel says that Ein Bein Al-Mazeli Mos Mashiach. Now how you can explain Shmuel? Shmuel says, he has a different opinion. He says, when Mashiach comes, there's no difference. The world stays the same. There's only going to be somebody who's in charge of the Jewish people, and the Jewish people will lead the world. But other than that, right, there's no miraculous occurrences like the moon giving off its own rays of light. So, how do you explain? So, lo kasha, it's not a contradiction. Kan ben machane tzadikim, kan ben machane shechina. It depends. If you're in the camp of the righteous people, light will be exceptionally brighter. But if you're in the machane of the shechina, where the shechina is, the camp of the shechina, so then it's going to be so bright that even the sun and the moon will be drowned out. Rava Rami Ksif. Rava contrasts fine pasuk. Ani amus v'echya. Right, I cause death and I will bring back to life. Uksiv machatzti v'ani arpeh. I crushed and I will heal. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Mashe ani memis ani mechiyeh. That which I have killed, I will bring back to life. Right? He's not saying I bring life and death. He's bringing life back to those who died. The hadar, and after that it says Mashe machatzti v'ani arpeh. That which I crushed, I will also heal. So I'm going to heal all the wounds, and just as I bring back to life everybody who's died. Tana Rabbanan. So our rabbis learn, Ani amis ve'echya, I bring death and I will bring back to life. Maybe you might think it means that one person is going to die and a different person will come to life. No way, like it happens in the world right now. Therefore the pasuk says, I crush and I will heal. Just like the person who gets wounded has to get healed. So too, the death and then bringing back to life is the same person. That is a proof that this is.
Why doesn't the Gemara earlier use that as one of the proofs?
We loop ourselves back. This is what we call a recall, right? A throwback, right? To get back. We're at 9:30, so we can stop here, right? It's not a terrible place to stop.
Yeah.